Welcome back, listeners, to Soul Sparks. I'm your host, Sana, and tonight we are joined by Dr. Edward Feinberg. He is an extraordinary voice in dentistry with over 40 years of practice. He's a national lecturer and director of the Onward Program. Now, listeners, Dr. Feinberg carries forward a very rare restorative dentistry tradition backed by 70 years of evidence. And he's very passionate about teaching dentists how to expand their skills, provide real choices for patients, and also rethink the current over reliance on implants. So, beyond the clinical world, his career itself is such a fascinating story, listeners, of dedication, innovation, and service. So, let's go ahead and explore his journey in there. And Dr. Edward, welcome to the show. And it is really an honor to have you here, as always.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. Thank you very much.
Super, super. Dr. Feinberg, let's start with your practice. I mean, you have practiced dentistry. You've also taught for decades. Um, what was the journey like? What exactly sparked that interest? What inspired you to dedicate your life to restorative work?
Well, I grew up in dentistry. My dad was a master and pioneer of full mouth reconstruction and crown and bridge dentistry. He was famous in his day, and he gave courses in the office to dentists. And typically, 10 to 12 dentists would come for 7 Wednesday mornings. And my dad would demonstrate every step on a patient how to make a fixed bridge, and another 7 sessions, how to make a precision attachment case. And so he was very famous among the dentists in his area, and he was way ahead of his time. So I grew up in this, and he was my mentor and my teacher. And
Mm,
I have 100,000 pictures of crown and bridge cases that go back to 1950 when he started
wow.
taking pictures of his cases. And he had an amazing teacher also. So the tradition that I'm doing comes from dentistry's roots. And what I'm really about is basic principles, because the basic principles that came from dentistry's roots are the ones that create the most successful outcomes. And one of the things that's very hard for me to watch after the career that I've had is how most dentists have no idea what the basic principles are, and that the techniques that are being taught in every dental institution are actually violating these basic principles that have the real track record. And as you mentioned, I have 70 years of crown and bridge cases that go back to 1950, where all the teeth were prepared and handled with the same basic principles. And the cases followed for decades with x-rays. So I could show cases that I personally did in about 30 and 40 years, and show the contrasts in the x-rays and show that there have been minimal changes over that period of time. And that's what really determines success, is how the cases hold up.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, there's less emphasis on longevity and health and more emphasis on economics and workflow, where economics is the deciding factor of what techniques should be done rather than longevity and health.
Mm, mm. Yeah, I think what I can say is that it's definitely reframing dentistry and not just as a clinical care, but I think it's a form of artistry and legacy as well. Um, of course, I mean touching lives in ways that can um, be seen, and it's also creating ripples far beyond the chair. It's like kind of removing the misconceptions in there around dentistry. So that's really inspiring, Dr. Edward. And as you mentioned about the current scenario in there, the current status quo, you have spoken about the overuse of implants. Um, I mean, why do you think it has become such a widespread approach? Is it because of the convenience or how the system is kind of designed? What exactly is the reason in there?
There are several reasons. One, I just mentioned the fact that very
Yeah.
few dentists today have good crown and bridge skills, but there
Yeah.
are a lot of dentists who have good implant skills. So a lot of dentists would rather do implants than crown and bridge because they're more comfortable doing implants.
Mm.
Some have the misconception that implants are more lucrative than crown and bridge. So
Okay.
they would rather do implants because they think it's better treatment when in reality that is not true. In fact, I'll give you a perfect example of that. When you go to the lectures or you look at the articles in publication, you don't see the teeth around the spaces where they're going to put implants in as being virginal teeth, meaning teeth with no fillings or no crowns and no
Yeah.
periodontal bone. Most of the time, the teeth are falling apart or they're going to need crown and bridge work. If you know how to do good crown bridge work, you can change the architecture of the entire area. You can bring the forces up close to the bone. You can make the teeth smaller so they put less stress on the bone. And you can also tie them together so that they help each other out rather than each tooth having to carry all of the forces by itself. And that will do something good for the entire area, and that's the end of the patient's problem. Whereas a single tooth implant only fills a space and does nothing for the teeth around it. So the patient's problems are never solved and they keep having problems that never end. And I think that's very unfair. They're not explained what the real choices are. Most of the time, implants are the wrong choice and not the right choice. Except in
Mm.
certain circumstances, they should be a last resort rather than a first resort. And they're not being done that way. They're being done as a first resort. And sometimes they're being done in such a manner that they are horribly invasive. And I think it's important to understand that implants are not a panacea. They have limitations, and they are certainly not lifetime. We started doing implants when they first came to this country in the early 80s, and I have seen everything with implants, and I know they're not lifetime. And so if when they fail, usually the patients are not good candidates for additional implants. And then they are up the creek and they're not being told that. So that there are definite minuses to implants. They're not like what a lot of practitioners think they are. They are not a panacea. If you can't put good long ones in, they shouldn't be done. Then something else should be done. And if you have other options for treatment in your treatment armamentarium, then you can offer patients the right choices or choices that might be better than implants. But unfortunately, most dentists are one trick ponies, and that's all they know how to do. So that's what everybody gets.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's a bit surprising. And um, uh, it's also profound, because it's kind of a very, I mean, very, organically or by default thinking that, newer is always better. But what you remind us here, Dr. Feinberg, that newer doesn't always mean better. I think we can very, very safely say that true wisdom comes from discernment, not just innovation. And talking about, from the patient's perspective, what risk, not only financially, but physically and emotionally, you think do patients face when implants are chosen as the first solution rather than one of many pathways to healing?
Well, I think you bring up a very good point because it's not just the money, but what you have to go through
Hmm.
that I think should determine what the right treatment is for each person. And there are some people who are just not good candidates for all of that surgery, and they're not good candidates for it. Maybe they're not up for it. physically, or they have some kind of systemic condition they're battling that makes them not a good candidate. But all these factors are very important in determining which treatment option is best for which patient. So I have a lot of different options that I could do for patients. Some are for patients who are not candidates for sophisticated dentistry. I see them being turned away because a lot of doctors have no idea what to do for them. Or should they get nothing? I don't think that's fair either. I think, we're treating human beings, and I get plenty of pleasure from helping human beings, even if I'm not doing sophisticated dentistry. I'm making them being able to function better, being able to have a better appearance so they can navigate socially. All those things are very important. And that's one of the reasons why dentistry is such a great field and has the ability to really help people.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Okay. Now, I would also bring in, your Onward, your work in Onward, which is to train dentists across the world. That's exactly why you built it. So, what inner gap, what low hanging fruits do you identify, and you are trying to, bridge that gap to, in the way dentistry is taught today, Dr. Feinberg?
Well, I don't like what I see going on. I don't like what's being taught in dental institutions. I know it's incorrect. I want to teach dentists how to do things correctly. I want to introduce them to a different perspective, a different way of looking at things so that they can do better for their patients. That's my only motivation. I have no real agenda other than that. Because that I had a great mentor, and my dad was my mentor, and I learned everything from him. I want to give this to other dentists, and I'm finding that very few dentists want it. And that really worries me, because how can we advance as a profession if we don't really examine what it is we're doing and why we're doing what we're doing? So when I give my courses, I show not only how to do everything, but why, and why it's so important. What factors really contribute to a successful outcome and a high percentage of success? I think that's very, very important. And I think it's a myth that you have to do something in a hurry and make a quick buck, and that's the only thing that's important, is to make as much money as you can. That's the attitude that I see now out there in the marketplace. And dentistry didn't come from that. My forebears were not like that. And I don't like that. I think we need to turn things around. Attitudes we have to turn around. And I don't know how you go about doing that, because I want to help the profession get back on the right road in my area of dentistry. But this is not true for all areas of dentistry. Some areas like endodontics and crown and bridge and orthodontics, for example, have made huge strides and are far superior than when I graduated from dental school. But I can't say the same thing about crown and bridge. I think it's gone backwards, because some of the so-called innovations actually violate the basic principles that allowed me and my dad's teacher to have so much success. And I think that if we're going to advance as a profession, anything new that comes down the pike must be compared to the standard that came before. Otherwise, we are not advancing. So a lot of technology in my area of practice is terrible, but not all of it. There's some really good technology. For example, scanning and milling is very accurate.
Mm-hmm.
One of the problems for scanning in crown and bridge is that you can't get under the gum all the way to scan the entire root surface.
Yeah.
So anyone who says all they do is digital can't be any good.
Yeah.
But I understand that a company in Israel invented such a scanner. And if that's true, then that's a game changer, because I only really care that basic principles are satisfied. I'm not one of those people who thinks, oh, well, this is the way we've always done it, so that's what should be done. I don't believe in that. I believe in basic principles, and anything that can help me satisfy those basic principles in a better way, I'm all ears. But I don't see much of it going in that direction. And I see very few dentists even knowing what the basic principles are. That's scary to me because this came from dentistry's roots and is not being passed on to the younger generation.
Of course, of course. I think that really, think it really speaks to true leadership. Offering not just techniques, but the foundation, a philosophy of care that can at least keep doors open for patients rather than closed. Just not one solution in there, or just kind of forcing upon the only one available solution, or making it look like. And before we wrap up, Dr. Edward, your career, I mean, I can strongly say that it's unusual, it's unconventional. um, what lessons from your journey would you want every young dentist and even patients to take to heart?
I think it's important to question things.
Yes.
And not just take what somebody says because, oh, well, that's so and so, or he has a fancy degree, or he drives a fancy car. None of that means anything to me. I think everything should be questioned. Why are you suggesting this? Why do you do things this way? And there better have a good answer and a good reason. That's my feeling. This is exactly what's you hit the nail on the head. When you go to the lectures and look at the articles written for dental publications, you don't see much in the way of follow up. Did this work? You see how pretty the cases look on the day of insertion. That doesn't mean anything. What's going to be 5 years from now, 10 years from now? I think patients need to think about that and they need to question their doctors. And if they don't like what someone said, I think they should get another opinion. What I see is that too often people will go get a second medical opinion and they accept that all physicians are not the same, but they'll just do whatever their dentist tells them. And we're no different. We have good, bad, and everything in between, all kinds of levels of knowledge. So if someone can't save your teeth, maybe another person can. And I think they should do some homework and do some investigating before they allow anything to be done. They should consider invasiveness and not be so quick to have teeth extracted. That's a mistake. And you can't undo that once you've had them extracted. I think that's important for patients to consider. And if there's any way you could save your own teeth, far better than any implants. And all of the data shows that that natural teeth can last a lot longer than implants. That's what we're seeing. And I don't want anyone to think that implants are not a good restoration, because where they're integrated, they're fabulous. And they're able to help people that we couldn't help in the past. But everything has its limitations, and everything has where it excels the best. And there's no panacea, no one size fits all. And I think that's very, very important.
Absolute, absolute. That's very well said, Dr. Edward. And um, it's powerful. It's about trust, courage, and also the human capacity to restore. Not just only how we smile, but how we live. So, Dr. Edward, if listeners they would like to connect with you and explore more about the work that you're doing and about the Onward program, what would be the best way?
Yes, well, my teaching website is www.theonward, ONWARD program.com. And while I made it for dentists and it's a teaching website, anyone could go there who wants to. You don't have to be a dentist. There's a lot of information on there. I put a lot of my podcasts on there too. So anyone who wants to learn more can look at the courses or the documents in my documents library. And I also have a monthly blog that I write every month about dental issues every month. So I have that too, and they can look at the previous blogs and get my take on things.
Super, super. Hey, so listeners, I'll make sure to have all the links for you in the show notes along with this episode, wherever you listen to your podcasts. And of course, Dr. Edward, thank you. Thank you so much, for your work, I believe it sets a legacy in there and, for the good, of course. And I mean, it's every time, such an informative and insightful conversation talking about dentistry and there with you. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And I always welcome an opportunity to help educate people, both patients and dentists.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Oh, so listeners, Dr. Feinberg reminds us that dentistry at its best is about people giving choices, restoring dignity, and never forgetting the human story behind every smile. And his call is clear. I believe it's innovation matters, but so does tradition as well. And real wisdom comes from blending both. So, for every listener, whether dentist or patient, the takeaway is very simple: always ask, always learn, and never settle for less than care that honors your full range of options. Until then, this is your host, Sana, signing off from Soul Sparks. Thank you.